Welcome to another episode of the Battlefields Bourbon podcast where we sit and sip, talk all things Civil War history and bourbon and whiskey. I'm Jack, joined as always by my co-host Elijah. Today we're coming to you from the historic Bell House in beautiful downtown Winchester, Virginia. The Bell House is preserved and maintained by the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation, managing entity of the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields National Historic District and the official sponsor of the Battlefields Bourbon podcast. If you'd like to support the podcast and you like what you hear, consider becoming a member of the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation. Every dollar you give to help support battlefield preservation in turn helps support the Battlefields Bourbon podcast. You can do that by going to www.shenandoahatwar.org and clicking on ways to give. Memberships start as low as $35, and we don't stop there. So become a member today. Help support the Battlefields Foundation. This episode in particular, though, is brought to you by the Blue and Gray Education Society. Discover America's premier Civil War education company with the Blue and Gray Education Society. Founded in 1994, now celebrating over 30 years of operation, their mission is to educate and preserve America's Civil War heritage. Their motto says it best, revealing our past for our future. Over the past 3 decades, the Blue and Gray Education Society has accomplished significant preservation projects. Thanks to the support and dedication of its members, highlights include the installation and refurbishing of hundreds of historical signs at battlefields across the nation, including Perryville, Cedar Creek, Kernstown, and North Anna. Purchasing and installing cannons at Civil War sites like Dalton and Pelham's Corner, and restoring the 3 flags inside of Lincoln's presidential box at Ford's Theater, one of my favorites. These projects and many more were made possible through membership dues and generous donations. The Blue and Gray Education Society also offers unmatched Civil War tours led by authors and subject matter experts. These immersive experiences allow you to walk the battlefields and explore areas that no other tour company dares to venture. They have also published several influential books, including the official National Geographic Civil War Traveler's Guide and the award-winning Revolutionary War Guidebook. You can visit their website at Blue and Gray, and that's A-N-D, blueandgrayeducation.org, or connect with them on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Join the Blue and Gray Education Society today. Helps preserve our nation's history for future generations, and thank you to them for helping support this episode. Our glasses are empty, Elijah, if you'd like to fill them up. And while we're filling up and discussing what our bourbon is for this episode, we'll also introduce the people in the room with us that are going to make this episode possible. So, Elijah, take it away.
Yeah, so we've got Old Fitzgerald 10-year bottled and bond, the spring 2023 edition. So kind of a rare one today. This one comes from Heaven Hill. It was released August 2023. They do their spring and fall releases. So just a biannual release, as well as some in the middle kind of special releases throughout the year. So there's this one's 10 years old. The Old Fitzgerald mash bill is a wheated mash bill. So this is a 75% corn, 20% wheat, 5% malted barley, bottled and bond. So it's 100 proof, aged 10 years, and your MSRP on that one's about $140.
Oofa.
Yeah, and I paid about $147, I think, after tax on this one. So yeah, no, it's a little bit of a pricey bottle for what it is, but as we'll see here in a moment, we'll see how that stacks up. But the history of Old Fitzgerald, if you're interested, is it goes back to the 1870s with John Fitzgerald, a U.S. Treasury agent, who was the I guess you would call him the Treasury agent for the distillery that was aging whiskey in a government bonded warehouse. I think it's Charles Herbst, if I'm saying that right, his distillery there in Kentucky. And he, being the Treasury agent, was the only one with the keys to that bonded warehouse. So he would, take a little stroll through the rick houses when nobody was around and sample from the barrels. And it said that he would only drink from the best barrels at the distillery, and those barrels would jokingly be named Fitzgerald barrels because they were a lot lighter, and you could tell he had been into them pretty heavily. But then Heaven Hill picked up on this bourbon brand sometime in the 1900s, and they've gone with it ever since. But yeah.
So Heaven Hill's the same. They make Elijah Craig, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we got 100 proof, 10 years aged, Old Fitzgerald bottled and bond.
And it
We've
comes in
got
a nice decanter too.
Yeah, very cool bottle. I love the labeling. It's very like 80s or 70s bourbon label.
This is from the 1950s.
There you go.
It's like a remodel of
A
their
couple years off.
yeah of that decanter that they did back in the day.
That's awesome. That's definitely like when you keep a skeleton, on the shelf there.
Yeah, once that's empty, I'll definitely hang on to that or use it, repurpose it.
Yeah, somehow. We'll take a sniff.
A sniff.
What's the proper term?
And nosing.
There you
sniff.
go.
You could say sniff.
It's like sniff.
You could say sniff.
So also in the room with us while we're sniffing is Jared Marlowe from the Blue and Gray Education Society, their membership director. Welcome, Jared.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've been a fan since episode 1.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you coming up here to Winchester, and we also have Aaron Siever with us of Aaron Civil War Travels. As usual, glad for him to be here. Excited time. So this will be an exciting episode, but off the nose. Elijah, you get anything? Jared, you get anything? Aaron, I'd ask you, but you've already chugged it.
I did nose it. I thought I got like a hint of vinegar at first. I don't know why, but there was no taste of vinegar, which was great.
Well, you've already tasted it, so
This one does have a little bit of a harshness to it for being a 10-year. I don't know if that's consistent with other Old Fitzgerald releases. Just this is the only one I've ever had. I mean, it's definitely sweet on the nose. That's obviously from your 75% corn and then 20% wheat on top of that. I mean, that's just going to be very mellow as far as
a lot of corn.
Yeah.
Well, since I've already
No. Yeah, you've downed it. So let's get everyone else can take a sip.
I'm gonna go ahead and refill it so I can get this right.
Yeah, that cork's hard to get off there. I don't want to say it's harsh, but because it is mellow at the same time. But I don't know, you get a little bit more of that alcohol kind of taste to it than you do like the other tasting notes and stuff. But I mean, for a wheated bourbon, you definitely get like the honey and all that other more softer notes on it as well.
Yeah, I thought the taste was vastly different from the smell. I didn't. Yeah. I mean, the smell to me, like I said, it got a vinegar. I don't like vinegar, but it got like a vinegar kind of whiff of it, and then I got some sweetness and stuff. But then when I had it, like the fire was not bad. It went down really smooth. I actually quite enjoy it. I've never had Old Fitzgerald, so I'm very happy about this. Jared, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna say to be aged 10 years, it still hits like a fairly new whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
It still hits like it's like a 2 or 3 year one. But I mean, it's great flavor. But it like I said, it packs a punch, but it's not overwhelming.
I think that's my thing with it is it's not what you would expect for a 10-year wheated mash bill. You would expect something a lot like
darker, richer.
Yeah,
maybe like you get an Eagle Rare. But this is, I don't know. I don't hate. It's really good. I thought it was really smooth. I don't get any.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because the 15 other drinks I've had before this, like not alcohol, but other things, like has messed up my tongue. But there was like no burn. I feel like I got more burn on the nosing at a time, and then I kind of like honed myself in. But definitely got that like almost borderline rubbing alcohol, like strong alcohol burn off the nose. But that sip's really good. That's a really this is great.
Yeah. The taste was vastly different than the nosing.
Yeah, for sure.
Which was interesting. I like it when stuff like that happens.
The one thing I love the most about like wheated bourbons, especially stuff from Heaven Hill, if you've had larceny or anything like that, is the like that honey wheat bread that you get on that, obviously because there's wheat in it, but it's just like that fresh baked bread, and I love that. But this is the first one I've had. I do have the spring. This one's a spring 23. I've got spring 24 at home as well. I haven't opened that one yet to compare the two, but we'll have it on an episode at some point.
Yeah, for sure. No, and back to the bottle. Normally we talk about that last, but you can't ignore the fact that it is a striking bottle. It's really neat.
You can't miss that one.
Yeah. So you've got a good picture that we'll post up for sure. So that's exciting. Anything else you want to add about Old Fitzgerald?
From Larceny's website, which Larceny made by Heaven Hill. It's just, one of Heaven Hill's brand websites. They were saying that John Fitzgerald was indeed a U.S. Treasury agent because there was a conflicting source trying to say that he was a distiller himself and made his own distillery. I don't think that's the case. He was just one who oversaw bonded rickhouses distilleries being a Treasury agent. And since he had access, like basically unlimited access to these rickhouses, he would just help himself to whichever ones he thought were the best. and that would end up being what they called Fitzgerald barrels. And then they finally released a line of bourbon called Old Fitzgerald before Heaven Hill ever picked up on it, just kind of as a joke. And then it's been a bourbon brand since the 1880s.
It's awesome. Well, exciting. Something new. We haven't done this yet. Haven't done an Old Fitzgerald product, so that's awesome. So as we get started, we've got our glasses full or refilled for Aaron at least. Don't forget to support the Blue and Gray Education Society, the sponsors of this episode. We are excited about this topic. Excited. This is our first 4-person podcast. So we've got our, Elijah, myself, and Aaron's back on, and then we've got Jared up here. So we're excited about this to see where it goes, and hopefully you all have something in your cup and you can, sit back and listen and enjoy. So with that being said, let's dive into our topic. It's an interesting one often talked about, but often forgotten
First
and
Kentucky
overlooked.
battle.
First, yeah. So Perryville, where in the grand scheme of things, gentlemen, where does this fit in the larger scale of the war? So for an average person that's looking at it, where does Perryville fit in the timeline, geographically? Where is Perryville if people don't know, and why Perryville?
So Perryville is going to be an October battle. So we're talking after the Battle of Antietam in the East, bloodiest day in history of an American war. We're talking well after the captures of Fort Donelson and Henry. And this is part of the invasion into Kentucky. If we look at Antietam, Lee is moving into Antietam in September of 1862, and they're bringing the war to the north more, trying to not only move the war out of Virginia or move it out of the South a little bit more, and push it north a little bit, but get reinforcements, get food, ammunition, whatever they can get to just help sustain the Confederacy. The same thing's happening in Kentucky. Now, you're going to have the invasion of Kentucky is actually a 2-prong invasion. You're going to have some principal characters. Braxton Bragg is going to be taking over command of the army that was down fighting the Battle of Shiloh against Grant in April. He's going to take over from P.G.T. Beauregard. And then you're also going to have Kirby Smith. Kirby Smith's going to have his own little command. And both of those commands will enter Kentucky, but not together. At points, they're going to be 100 miles apart.
Wow.
So there's going to be some battles prior to this that will be fought, and it will be Confederate victories. You'll have the Battle of Richmond, Munfordville. These 2 battles are great victories for the Confederacy, but they're costly as well. But you also have the problem of, again, we don't have a concentrated force. So Perryville, much like a lot of battles, is more of a happenstance thing. It's hot in October, and this battle's fought October 8th. So we're talking into September, beginning of October. It still gets hot. October here in Virginia, it'll probably be 90 one day and 20 the next.
Yeah.
Kentucky is very similar in that aspect. So it's a hot, just dry time in Kentucky. As a matter of fact, in Perryville itself, they have not had rain for 9 days straight. And this is a town, this is a place that actually thrives on water. They have Doctor's Creek, or Doctor's Fork, as it says on here, the Chaplain River. There's a lot of tributaries around them. It makes them a good spot to get water. What do the Union troops and the Confederate troops not have right now? Water. So what's going to end up happening is the Confederates are actually over at a place called Harrodsburg. They're going to move away from there as we should actually talk about the Union guys too.
Yeah.
Don Carlos Buell. He is going to be in command of the Union forces there, opposite of Braxton Bragg. And we'll get into those guys a little bit later on the 2 commanding generals. But Buell has sent his men specifically under McCook, one of the fighting McCooks from Ohio, has sent this first division in to go and procure water. At the same time, the Confederates are at Perryville to get water. Again, it's been dry. There's not really any flowing water. The things that they will find in Doctor's Creek will be pools of water, stagnant water. It's got like algae and stuff on it. They're still going to drink that. You know, we know now you could boil it and all that stuff. And I'm sure some of them probably did, but some of them were darn thirsty. They just drank it straight out. So on top of, you're going to have some sickness that happens. This will be the final battle of the Kentucky invasion. Final big battle. But it gets lost because we have Antietam, you know, right before this, mass casualties. We have Shiloh before this in April, mass casualties. This one, not as big on the casualty list. Still pretty good amount of casualties. We have over 7,000. But in the scheme of things, when you're talking 20,000, you know, or 50,000, you know, Gettysburg, it's a drop in the bucket when you really get down to it. So it gets lost based on that.
When you consider the forces engaged too, this is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Is the 55,000 Union troops, they say 22,000 engaged against 16,000 Confederates.
Confederates, yeah.
But the Confederate losses, 3,396 of your 16,000 men, almost 3,000 wounded. I mean, that's a big chunk of your fighting force.
Chunk, yeah. Yeah, and Bragg, he is going to move from that Shiloh area, Corinth, Iuka, Mississippi, to Chattanooga. He's going to move through Alabama to Chattanooga, Tennessee. From Chattanooga, that's when they'll go through Tennessee. Originally, he's thinking about hitting Nashville. Kirby Smith, who has his little independent command, roughly, I think it's about 10,000 men, somewhere around there, he comes up with this idea to go into Kentucky. And part of that has to do with a guy we've talked about on the podcast before, John Hunt Morgan, who has come back and said, hey, there are reinforcements in Kentucky. You can go in there and people will join.
Probably recruiting effort.
Recruiting, yeah. Big recruits are going to happen. So Bragg says, okay. Him and Kirby Smith talk. They decide to go into Kentucky. Bragg agrees and goes in. Again, we're not to a point where we have one overall commander, though. Technically, Bragg is over Kirby Smith. Eventually, that'll happen, but it's a little late. But when they get into Kentucky, again, success. It's great. We're talking 71,000 engaged here at Perryville.
When does this begin? So when are they stepping off and kind of this campaign begins?
I think it's early. They're almost in Kentucky for about 2 months. I think it's August when they actually step off and get in there. Of course, by the beginning of October, you know, the final battle is October 8th. So about 2 months that they're going to end up being in Kentucky. There will be points where they will take a vast amount of Kentucky, and it's kind of just a chess match between the two. One thing the Confederates are not getting is those reinforcements that Morgan was talking about. It's not happening. Some of the soldiers will say the citizens are, you know, they're sympathetic toward us, but they don't want to join the army. Yeah. They're like, okay, great. Glad you're here. Go do your thing. Yeah. We're going to stay here. Because, you know, they're a border state. It's not an official Confederate state. Still in the Union. It's a border state. They're trying to remain neutral. Doesn't really work out, as we'll see. You know, there's troops on both sides, and they have a good amount of battles in Kentucky. So there's going to be an incident where Bragg will actually be in the capital city, and I'm drawing a blank on what the capital city of Kentucky was at that time. I know they're going toward Louisville.
Frankfurt.
I think it's Frankfurt. Yeah, it's in Frankfurt, and they're putting in the Confederate government there, and there's like this huge celebration, and actually they will start receiving cannon fire during the celebration from the Union troops, and Bragg is thinking the entire Union army's there, and it's not quite that, but it's going to give him a little bit of panic,
right?
So Bragg is actually looking for an opportunity as well to fight Buell. Now we should get into the two commanding generals, really. Braxton Bragg and Don Carlos Buell. If you put them in a bag and shook them up, whichever one fell out, the other one would be exactly the same, just about. Their troops hated them, did not like them. Their subordinates didn't like them. Not saying they're bad guys. I mean, Braxton Bragg has one heck of a record in the Mexican War, not such a good record in the Civil War. Don Carlos Buell is thought to be a Southern sympathizer, a traitor, because his wife is Southern. They had slaves. He hated abolitionists. But he's a Union soldier. As a matter of fact, Buell will actually be relieved prior to the Battle of Perryville. Command will be given to George Thomas, but Thomas will send back and say, hey, wait a minute, we're in active campaign right now. We're moving. It would be foolhardy to switch commanders. So the order's rescinded.
Was Thomas with this army?
Thomas is with this army. Now, he was at Nashville for a while. He commands the right wing of the Union Army. So he'll be down by Nashville for a while, protecting that area because they thought Bragg was going to go there. That was the first major Confederate capital to fall, was Nashville. So it would make sense for the Confederates to go there and retake it. But again, this battle happens because we're looking for water. Much like, the Battle of Gettysburg, or looking for shoes. Maybe. Yeah. But it's random things like that. There's going to be a skirmish that actually happens on October 7th on the Springfield Pike. And it starts on the Pike. It'll continue to a place called Peters Hill, where those Union troops that were going to look for this water are coming up against the Confederates who are looking for the water. They'll clash. Bragg is thinking he is facing a small portion based on reports that he is getting from his cavalry, Joseph Wheeler and some others that are, it's just a small force. They're just, out looking. This is McCook's 1st Division coming up with Gilbert, one of the Union generals. They're coming forward up the Springfield Pike. And so they're trying to get to this water, and Bragg is under the impression it's just a dispatched unit. He's going to be vastly wrong in that as the day progresses the next day.
Before we get deeper, set up a little bit of this area of Kentucky. Are we deep into Kentucky? Are we just across the border from Tennessee? I mean,
Perryville's about midway, I guess. Yep. About midways into Kentucky. I can't remember. Are we south of Louisville? I think it's south of Louisville.
If it's close to Harrodsburg, you're south of.
Is it a pretty big town, small town?
It's a small town. It's not a major town, but it has all the tributaries and things.
That it makes it perfect for what these soldiers were looking for.
Right. It's actually named after a Commodore, I think. It had another name before, but it became Perryville. It was named after like a Commodore who kind of reestablished things there. So it's got a lot of history with it. It's a really neat. Actually, been to the town. It's a very neat town. Still not, even today, not really that big compared to, some towns you think in modern days. But definitely you can tell being there, the water is a big factor. I mean, they've got all these tributaries going around. So again, another kind of just more of a happenstance battle here.
Yeah.
Not really a planned battle. After that October 7th skirmish, that's when Bragg's going to start setting up his troops and getting ready for a battle. Thinking, we can take out this unit that's been pressing us. And what ends up happening is we're going to end up in an all-out battle with a lot of soldiers. Again, 71,000 engaged. Some of those will not make it till later in the evening. But the early morning fighting is going to occur around Peters Hill, which is kind of where that skirmish of the 7th ended. Perryville has a lot of hills. And if you've been on the battlefield, Garrett,
I've not.
I know you guys did the signs out there though, right? So there's a series of hills there. There's also, we're going to have a cornfield, a valley of death. These battlefields have a lot of the same things. Creeks and things like bloody creeks. So we're going to have a lot of that.
What's this hill again?
Peters Hill.
Peters Hill.
And this is where it's really going to start. Bragg is actually going to order a morning assault by the entire army. He wants the whole army to hit any Union troops they see, but it's going to take until noon to get their forces organized. So it doesn't really happen in the early morning. By that time, McCook's men have arrived with 13,000 fully. Gilbert's division was already there, so he's arrived with another 13,000. And so now we've got a pretty large attack. The Confederates, however, are only going to attack with 3 divisions. Those 3 divisions will actually hold their own and push the Union troops back. Part of that is McCook's men, who will struggle for over 5 hours, are inexperienced. They have been in service less than 3 months. So when this battle starts, this is their first action.
These are green troops.
Very green troops. But they do hold for about 5 hours, but they get pushed quite a ways. The main veteran units are actually not ordered to engage in the beginning of this battle because Don Carlos Buell is only about 2 miles away. But another phenomenon that we tend to hear in the different battles is atmospheric bounce. Buell has no clue that a major battle is happening. So he hears some artillery firing, doesn't think much of it. He figures it's skirmishing. So he does not send troops to reinforce McCook until later in the day. And honestly, the Confederates will have success all over the field at Perryville throughout the day of the 8th. You could really break this battle down into 3 phases. You have your phase at Peters Hill, and then it'll move. It's kind of like starts on the left, moves to the middle, and goes to the right. Starts on the right, goes to the middle, and goes to the left. But you have, on your Confederate side, you have the division or the corps of Hardee and Polk. We're going to have guys like Samuel Buckner, who surrendered at Fort Donelson, Fort Henry. We're going to have, he was involved in that. We're going to have him here. He's going to be part of this battle. So we've got a lot of characters that we've talked about before. On the Union side, you're going to have, like we talked about the fighting McCooks, you're also going to have this little Irish guy named Sheridan. And he, for some reason, he just sticks out here in the valley. I don't know why.
Might ring a bell.
Might ring a bell to some people if you're familiar with the Shenandoah Valley. Phil Sheridan is part of Buell's army. He's a colonel at the time. Yeah. So we've got the fighting happening with McCook's men and these Confederates. The veteran unit's not coming. Some of the key places on the battlefield are known as Open Knob. This is where Union cannon are going to be, and they're going to be captured by the Confederates. You're also going to have Loomis's Heights and the H.P. Bottoms Farm. And at the Bottoms Farm is going to be some heavy fighting there. It's more of in a valley down near Doctor's Creek.
It's interesting that you mentioned that the Union cannon gets captured, because I was reading here that when Thomas was given command, or for the moment given command of the army, he was saying how that army that Buell had command of was ill-equipped with artillery.
Yeah.
So you're already losing something that
don't have a whole
commodity as it is.
Great amount of. Whereas the Confederates actually will have a good amount of artillery. That's going to be one of the things later on when they're withdrawing. But these places are massive victories for the Confederates all over the field. They're actually going to push Union troops back about 2 miles during this time. And the Union troops will be reinforced. The battle will go back and forth, but the casualties are just going to be absolutely massive. In the small amount of time, we're talking about like a 5-hour battle, roughly, because it really doesn't start till noon. It'll go until nightfall, but it's not quite as long as some of our other battles that we talk about. There are some, again, more characters in these battles. We have Kirby Smith. We have Braxton Bragg. We're going to have Leonidas Polk, known as the Bishop. We're going to have William Hardy, Phil Sheridan, Pat Claiborne. As you guys know, one of my favorites. Love Claiborne. He is going to hit hard in this battle, like we've come to know that he does. He's also going to get wounded in this battle.
What is Sheridan command of? A regiment?
Sheridan is, I believe it's a regiment.
Infantry or cavalry?
I think it's infantry.
Infantry at this time.
I don't think he touches Cav until 64.
Yeah, that's later. So speaking of Sheridan, his biggest fighting, he's going to have some very hard fighting at Bottoms Hill. And he's actually making some progress. But he will be pulled back. The Union troops will take Peters Hill eventually. And that's where Sheridan will be pulled back to. And Sheridan's quote on that is, he says that he could drive the Rebs to hell if he was allowed. Sounds exactly like Phil Sheridan. But there's going to be a lot of different things that are happening. The 105th Ohio is going to be up on a place called Open Knob, which is one of the places Confederates will attack and eventually have success there. But the 105th Ohio will watch the 123rd Illinois charge the Confederates that are coming at them, and they will be just repulsed. And one of the 105th says such an order was simple madness. And because they're just running into fire.
So you said this is about in total, this battle is 5 hours, but when does it kick off? What time of day?
It really doesn't kick off till afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah. It's,
so daylight's not an
issue. Early afternoon, we're going to kick off there around Doctor's Fork. I keep saying Doctor's Creek, near the Bottom House. And, you're going to have, just fighting back and forth in that area. And then it'll move to the next phase, which will be our part 2 of the battle, as you would say, which is just a little bit.
So part 1, the Confederates are kicking butt.
Yeah. They're kicking butt. And even in part 2, they're pushing throughout the whole battle. They're going to push the Union troops back. You're going to have some hard fighting by Sheridan and things like that. But Buell is not sending the amount of reinforcements he should.
So with Braxton kind of taking the initiative in the beginning and launching the attacks on the 8th, is there, because you said even though Bragg outranks Smith in some capacity, they're both in charge of their own independent units, and Bragg doesn't have direct overall command of Smith's troops at this time. Is there some sort of initiative that in this early part of the fighting where Smith tries to take control or do his own thing? Are they working together?
They're not working together. They're about 100 miles apart.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You said that.
Now, Claiborne, and I cannot remember the other gentleman that comes with him, but Claiborne has come from Kirby Smith to Braxton Bragg.
Wouldn't be Van Dorn, would it?
No. Van Dorn is, by this time, I think Van Dorn's dead.
Was that Bushrod Johnson?
Yes, I think it is Bushrod Johnson. Yeah, that comes down. And so we have a lot of people coming in.
Passing the bourbon here, folks. Bear with us. It's critical. We keep our glasses full, just like you all do at home. Yeah. So I think it's just interesting too that this gets overlooked in the grand scheme of things. We haven't finished the battle yet, but off the top, the fact that this is the same time frame as, it fits in this window of all this action post Shenandoah Valley campaign. Okay, we're in the fall of 1862. Antietam's happened in September, but there's this Confederate push into, basically Union territory.
I mean, they're both going to the border states early on in the war. You would think that, Perryville and this Kentucky campaign would make as much, headlines as far as what the Maryland campaign does.
Do you know from a wartime political perspective, because Antietam obviously makes its waves in that sphere and the result and the aftermath and what's done and what's not done, but do you have any idea when it comes to this Kentucky campaign in Perryville, what the effects are?
Well, I think that, or one thing I was noticing is this battle and Antietam are very similar. Both going into a border state, both going there trying to get reinforcements. Where Antietam was a launching point for Lincoln and the Republicans. Because keep in mind, this is 1862. This is a critical year for Lincoln because it's a election year for Congress.
Yeah.
So he's not up for election.
That gets forgotten a lot. That
Right.
62 is an important political. Everyone
So-
thinks of 64, but 62 is very important.
So even though, it was a tactical stalemate, the Union gets credit for winning Antietam, for winning Antietam, but it wasn't a decisive victory. It was decisive enough to issue the Emancipation Proclamation, but Lincoln is still looking for a capstone victory heading into the election. And keep in mind, this is October. We're 1 month away from an election. So this is a pivotal moment in time for both armies. Because, if the Confederates win, you're looking at, people getting tired of the war, voting for Democrats in Congress who probably want to end the war, which is what the Confederates want. They just want to keep it going as long as they can to wear the Union forces out. So, this is a critical battle.
And Perryville doesn't really give them that capstone either.
No,
it's
it
more
doesn't.
the same as Antietam as far as, that inconclusive or, one side gets your tactical victory,
Right.
one gets your, that sort of thing. It's nothing is decisive. And I think that's part of what really keeps it going.
I think another thing we kind of forget about during this time too is we have the election, we have all that, but we also had the Emancipation Proclamation issued.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that capstone victory makes that look less like a political move that's to save what you're doing.
It's an arm twist move.
yeah,
It's like,
It makes it look like
it's like, hey, we
this is
crushed
just
you,
part of-
and
Right.
here you go.
because of this is what we're doing, not in spite of you.
Yeah.
The Battle of Perryville is just, it gets so mixed up in it. And there's some really cool stories with Perryville. Again, a 5-hour fight. We start to see though, during this battle, the infighting within the Confederate Army, which happens a lot. Later on, we'll have Confederate generals sign a petition to get Braxton Bragg the heck out of there. This is down after Chattanooga and Chickamauga.
Yep.
But it really starts. It starts early between him and Kirby Smith, but it really starts within his army with Polk. Polk, part of the reason the Confederates didn't attack right away on October 8th is Leonidas Polk. He's hesitant in initiating an attack. And part of that is just he's not 100% sure what he has in front of him. He may have more than what the cavalry's saying, which he would have been right. But this is going to infuriate Bragg, who is temperamental anyway. And he's going to say, having ordered the attack and that no time should be lost, I was concerned at not hearing the commencement of the engagement. To my surprise, however, no gun was heard, and on my arrival at about 10 a.m., I was informed that it was determined not to attack. So Bragg's mad because he has ordered this, and he is, at this point, he is going to make adjustments to the Confederate line. So this is what's taking them so much time in that morning phase of October 8th, because he wants to bring on that engagement immediately. He feels like he's facing a smaller force. He knows if he gives more time, Buell's going to show up with the rest of his guys. Luckily, Buell is not understanding what's going on because of the atmospheric balance. But again, and here's just another thing, Bragg is going to return to General Polk a little while later, and he's going to say, General, why are you not fighting as I instructed? And Polk's going to reply, I'm occupying an offensive defensive position.
Offensive defense.
That's one way to put it.
Allegedly, Bragg's comment, strange position to occupy, was given, and Bragg then proceeded to realign the men in gray. So Bragg is now feeling he's got to take this over, right? And he's going to actually personally lead troops onto the field and set them up in this morning phase of battle. And it's just, you start to see that infighting that's happening
At this moment in the battle.
this moment in the battle. It's a crucial moment of the battle where, that if this attack happens in the early morning, it's quite possible the Confederates may have been able to stack up a couple corps.
Yeah.
gosh, it sounds like so many other battles we've talked about.
Well, I mean, you hear these like things like the infighting and the mismanagement and that sort of thing, combined with their low numbers as far as 16,000 strong. You would think that the Union Army, with their 22,000 engaged, 55,000 total, it should be a cakewalk.
Should be a cakewalk. But again, we have to think too that whole 55,000 is not there.
No,
because Buell has no clue what's really going on. Matter of fact, I think there's one point in the battle he'll say, "That's a lot of artillery fire for a small skirmish." Yeah, that should have been an indicator.
Right.
There's going to be an incident too where, Bragg is now kind of taken over command of these troops, and he's going to send Chetham's division up what's called the River Road. It's a passageway that's
Every battlefield has a river.
every
road.
battle has a river road consisting of a dry bed up the Chaplin River. And the movement is going to cause a lot of dust. Again, drought, right? So very dusty roads, very dusty things. So dust is filling the air, and these Union troops who are inexperienced are going to start looking at this and go, Confederates are retreating. They're going to be very incorrect about that. They think they're retreating toward Harrodsburg, while the entire regiment, these Federal troops are going to continue to arrive, coming in from Buell that have been marching toward this. They're going to start stacking their arms because they're thinking the Confederates are getting the heck out of there.
Battle's over.
And that's not what's happening. The Confederates will reach that position that Bragg desired, and that's when they will initiate an artillery barrage all along the Union line. And this will be an hour-long artillery duel. And one of the Confederates will describe in writing, Perryville is situated in a beautiful valley, being surrounded on all sides by a beautiful range of hills. Like we were talking about earlier, it's a series of hills. Newmarket is a very similar battle, a lot of hills.
Yeah.
One of the grandest places in the world for a cannon duel. And so these guys are firing back and forth. We've talked about Peters Hill, Open Knob, places like that. Loomis Heights. These guys are firing back and forth, and we've got an hour artillery barrage. Sam Watkins, 1st Tennessee, if
Company H.
Company H. If people don't know who that is, he wrote a book. It's his diary. But he's going to talk about cannon on both sides belching and blazing fire, and the air was full of bursting shells and sulphuric smoke, and blaze of musketry was like a great forest fire among the dry leaves of autumn.
There's another good one from him too, where he said the guns were discharged so rapidly that it seemed that the earth itself was in a volcanic uproar, and that the iron storm passed through our ranks, mangling and tearing men to pieces. That's crazy.
He's pretty graphic in his stuff, but you kind of wonder how much of that is, maybe later. I don't know, but very poetic in a way. But we have, the Federals are now caught off guard, and these are those inexperienced troops. Those guys are still going to hold out for that 5 hours. They're going to get pushed back, but they're not going to it's not going to be a rout. They're not going to run. They will be reinforced eventually. The initial attack upon McCook's Federal line will actually be from General Daniel Donelson's brigade, and we were talking about the time, early afternoon. It's going to be about 2 p.m. when that attack actually happens. So Bragg is wanting us in the morning. We're not ready till noon, and we actually don't attack till 2. So we've lost a lot of time before the Confederates. We've lost a lot of time because we're in October. It gets dark a lot sooner than it does. Right now we're in August. It's getting dark here in Virginia, around 8:30.
Well, then we'll have daylight savings, which they didn't have back then, but
it'll just mess
still
everything.
gets darker. Yeah.
So they're going to the fighting is going to go back and forth throughout that afternoon, and that's the thing is that these guys, this battle is not absolutely decisive. Both sides will end up claiming victory for this battle.
Much like Antietam.
Yeah, very similar to Antietam. Like Jarrett was saying, Antietam, border state. These two battles are virtually, they're cousins for sure.
Just a different theater.
Yeah.
3-phase battle as well.
A 3-phase battle. And 3 different parts that are happening. No one mass coordinated attack. By 3 p.m., you're going to have Manny's Confederates who are going to be able to move through some woods and advance within a short distance of a split rail fence near the base of Open Knob. Now, this is where Phil Sheridan is. Sheridan, and that's where Sheridan's actually going to be able to hold his own. And that's when he says, if I was allowed, I could push them all the way to hell. Which, again, I just love that quote because that sounds like Phil Sheridan from what we've all read and know of him. But at Open Knob, there's going to be federal guns there. Terrell's position is going to be beside the federal guns under Parson. And the federal troops and artillerymen are going to detect Manny's movements toward them. And they're going to fire into the gray ranks. And one of the guys says almost immediately casualties just escalated. So we're talking, we talk in the end, it's not a massive amount of casualties, it doesn't seem like, but in that small amount of time, that's a lot of casualties. This has been a 12-hour battle. Well, we're going, close to 20,000, at that point, if the numbers stayed the same. And of course, we talked about the 123rd Illinois making that charge after a rapid exchange of gunfire. But then the battle moves on, to that third phase, that evening phase. And that you could almost put that into a 2-part phase. But one of the greatest incidents of not misrepresentation, well, I guess misrepresentation, but not knowing who is with you happens during this portion of the battle, and that happens to be with Leonidas Polk, the bishop, General Polk. He ends up in Union lines, and he will start commanding for them to cease fire. And what he actually says is he's challenged, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'll show you who I am, sir. Cease fire, sir, at once." So the guy says, "Okay, I'm going to do that." And Polk, keeping up this charade of being, possibly a Union general, will then make his way into, I think it's Little is whose lines he gets into. He'll make his way into Confederate lines, and he'll yell. His bluff works. He passes the 122nd Indiana into the safety, and he proclaims, "Every mother's son of them are Yankees. Fire." So now his men will unleash this. But so the Union troops, if I'm the Union, they're confused as can be because they just got ordered to cease fire. So they do. So he gets in, and now they're getting fired upon, realizing very quickly that he is, not a Union general. One of my favorite parts of that. We talked a little bit about Kirby Smith and Bragg. They're not, at this point, they're definitely not cooperating because they're too far apart. Bragg kind of went with Smith's idea, but it never came to fruition I think Bragg thought they were going to be together, and they're in two separate areas. So that is one of the big things that happens. Even with Kirby Smith, though, I don't think the Confederates would have actually won a 2-day battle here.
Don't have the forces to sustain.
They don't have the forces to sustain. So you've got a lot of different things. But one of the Confederate officers, just talking about the battle as a whole, will talk about we suffered terribly. Because they're losing troops they can't afford to lose, and they're not getting reinforcements. I think Kirby Smith says he got maybe a regiment full of men out of the entire state. So not a lot.
Was it worth it?
It wasn't, definitely not worth it. But there's also in the evening, we're going to have another incident of, and I want to say this might be the first incident from if I've read right, where we're actually going to have fighting in a town. They will go fighting street to street for a little while in the town of Perryville. It'll be a pretty heated skirmish at the end of the battle, but nightfall is going to stop that attack. So a lot of different things that are going to happen at Perryville. But the biggest thing is this is going to end the Confederate invasion of Kentucky. That this battle is going to push the Confederates out. Bragg is going to realize he's going to start retreating because as Buell's forces come online, he's vastly outnumbered now. He needs to retreat. So he's going to start making his way back toward Tennessee. Then, on down, he'll go back down toward Chattanooga. He's going to use the Cumberland Gap. And this is where we're going to get, Buell will actually be relieved after this because he doesn't stop the Confederates from crossing a river and getting back into safety. As we know now, looking back at it, victory in a battle is still chaotic.
So McClellan, it's like Antietam.
Yeah, it's very Antietam.
It's like, were we talking about Antietam now?
Yeah. It's very similar.
Allowed the Confederates to get back across the river to safety.
Yeah, it's they allow them to get back across the river to safety. They don't, they don't capture. So that's going to end up being the end of Buell, much like it was the end of McClellan.
Part of me wonders, what was Buell's mindset during this battle? Knowing that he had been relieved of command,
Doesn't matter how this ends.
Yeah, you had been given your papers at that point.
Yeah.
What do you
what does it matter?
What does it matter? And maybe that's why he didn't send his fighters in there.
Mess it up for the next guy.
Right.
Yeah.
If you win, you're out. If you lose, you're still out.
Yeah, I think there's a good bit of that. I think he knows his time is up. It's just,
But at the same time, you got to weigh it. It's like, does he think if I do well, I'll get moved to a better spot, or am I completely relieved?
No point in trying.
Is there no point? So, well, if someone knows the answer to that, please hit our email and let us know. But that'd be interesting because maybe there's letters we have no idea about that tell us. But
yeah, I think really it's such a happenstance battle, and with him having the atmospheric battle, I mean, he's only 2 miles away, but I know from experience of just doing an artillery demo that from a mile from a Confederate battery, we were a Union battery, we could hear them clear as day. Like they were right beside us. They didn't even know we were there. We would reply to their fire. They couldn't hear it. And that's at Gettysburg. And it was an October day and it was really windy. They never knew we were there. They thought we didn't show up. But we could hear their commands like they were right next to us. So it's a very interesting phenomenon that happens when that happens. So for him to be like, oh yeah.
And those are things that you don't think about until somebody that was there tells you, yeah, this is actually what happened. This is why, we couldn't do this or hear that.
Yeah. It's very, it's a very interesting battle. Kentucky itself is a very interesting state full of battles.
I mean, the landscape is just all these hills and valleys and stuff. It's it's the perfect storm for battlefields as far as that goes. Your hills
and making bourbon.
And making bourbon.
Yeah.
Maybe they should have just all stopped, had some bourbon, and they would have been
called it a day. Well, they do say that this is close to, or Bragg's force command was in Bardstown at one point, which is where Heaven Hill is today, is focused out of Bardstown. So cool little tie-in there. And then another tie-in, I guess, if you want to call it one, would be that the 21st Kentucky Infantry, although held in reserve, Captain George T. Stagg, who we mentioned in a previous episode, he would have been with the 21st Kentucky Infantry, but like I said, although they are held in reserve, they didn't see action at that battle. Which, if they did, who knows what would have happened to George?
Wouldn't have his bourbon, maybe.
Yeah, maybe not.
Can't
maybe
have
not.
that. That's not acceptable.
Jared, was there something you wanted to add?
I was just gonna say, wasn't Polk the thorn in Bragg's side the very next year at Chickamauga for the same reasons?
Same reason he hesitates. He's offensive defensive.
Yeah, offensive defensive.
Yeah, same reasons.
And almost the same results too.
Yeah. Had it not been for Longstreet with his hammer attack as he does in Virginia, Chickamauga was a different battle.
Yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to add, Aaron, for Perryville?
just definitely, if you get the chance to go out there, definitely do so. Blue and Gray Education Society has redone the signs out there, which is awesome. I have not gotten to see the battlefield since those signs were redone, but just being on the field, it is a beautiful area. It is a very neat battlefield to walk across. Again, a lot of hills.
A lot of it preserved?
A lot of it preserved, yeah. A lot of good monuments, a lot of good people there to give you a lot of good information. I kind of ran through the battle very quickly and maybe a little choppy, so I apologize for that.
Well, for a deeper understanding, is there any book recommendations you've got?
I would, if you can do Civil War Battles and Leaders, I believe it's volume 3, starts with the Perryville campaign. I also have this wonderful book by Randy Bishop, Kentucky Civil War Battlefields, A Guide to Their History and Preservation, which is a great book. It's got a lot of good information in it. He talks about, the stuff between Polk and Bragg. But he also talks about all the different things they've been able to do to preserve that battlefield.
Is it a national park or?
I think it's a state.
Yeah.
I think Perryville's a state.
Yeah, it's state.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jared, is there anything you wanted to add to like the modern day aspect and what Blue and Gray is played a role in?
Sure. Around 2013 or 2015, the park expanded and added on some acreage. So about 10 years ago, the Blue and Gray Education Society purchased 12 new signs for the addition. So they put in 12 signs there. And just this year, we refurbished all 47 markers on the battlefield. So if you go there and visit, you'll see brand new markers put in by generous donations from our members and from dues from our members. So if you join our society, that's what your money goes for, projects like this. But
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, but if you go to Perryville today, you'll see brand new signs that have all been refurbished thanks to the works of the Blue and Gray Education Society.
Yeah, it's like keeping history alive.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Is there anything else you wanted to add for the society as a whole? This is your episode now, so.
Well, that's one project we did. We're constantly looking for more projects. I know in a previous episode, y'all mentioned Pelham's Corner. If you go visit that site today in Fredericksburg, there's a cannon there because of us, which there should be a cannon there due to his efforts. We just put 3 cannons in at the new park at Dalton, Georgia for the start of the Atlanta campaign. So we're constantly working on, trying to preserve our nation's history, and we invite people to come. Like I said, 100% of dues go towards
that type of work.
Yep. It doesn't go to me. It doesn't go to anybody else. It goes towards putting back into sites like Perryville.
That's awesome. I mean, it's just great that there's a group covering all the bases across the nation, and the digital media you guys produce. Your YouTube channel is doing great.
Yeah.
Tons of talks on there. If you like listening to Aaron or other historians, there's tons of programs on there.
And this is a Battlefields and Bourbon exclusive, I think. I haven't really told anybody the depth of this, but
breaking news.
Yeah, breaking news here in Winchester. So one project that I'm working on now for Blue and Gray is I am moving all of our video archives to YouTube. So every seminar that we had from 1994 up until 2009 is going to be uploaded to our channel. So
that's awesome.
Our library is going to go from 100 videos now to about 400.
Wow.
Over just whenever you got, whenever you're doing it.
I thought I would space it out and do one video a week.
Wow.
But it's going to be one talk a week, and they're going to be grouped by campaigns. So, for example, the ones I've recently downloaded are the Overland Campaign, Vicksburg, and I think the one that's going on now, actually there's probably a video going live now as we record this, is the North and the Civil War, but all types of speakers, guys like Ed Bars.
Yeah, I mean, name some of those folks that might not even be around.
Ed Bars, Kent Masterson Brown, Gordon Ray, Chris Calkins. Guys who literally wrote the books
on these battles we know and talk about.
Right. So if you want a chance to to see them, talk about, their work. And I know I haven't looked at all of them because, like I said, it's like 300 and some videos that are going up there. But I know a few of them, you're following guys like Ed Bars on the battlefield.
Wow.
So you're actually going, there's video of him going towards the battlefield and standing on a redoubt or standing on something, talking to you. So
That's so cool, though.
And is this like 1990s, Ed?
Right. Or it's 1994 through 2009. So hopefully I'm in the 1990s now.
Have you come across Ed in the 90s?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So for those folks that maybe have seen him in the past 20 years, try the last 30 years. So
yeah,
that's exciting.
Yeah. He's
you would think he was 94 in 94,
right,
but,
yeah,
he didn't act like it. He acted.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's the same old Ed. But yeah, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll see a new video every week now through probably 4 or 5 years from now at this rate. I've scheduled videos now, and I'm up through March.
Wow.
of next year. So that's doing one a week on top of things like talking to Aaron and doing his videos. And I think you and I have one scheduled soon for.
Yep.
So. Yeah, just please connect with us. Join us. Like I said, your membership money goes towards projects like this. It doesn't go to me. It doesn't go to anything else. It goes into saving American Civil War sites.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Jared, thank you so much. Thank you to the Blue and Gray Education Society. Thank you to Aaron from Aaron's Civil War Travels for coming on and diving deep into Perryville. You can check him out on YouTube, Facebook, and any other social medias you got.
Yeah, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and then we have a website that's
Live.
That is live. It's a long name though, but it's a Google site. So if you get on the Facebook, you can find that. It's easier to just point people there for the moment to click on the link. But definitely subscribe, and if you have questions, available for talks and tours now. So
Yeah, exciting stuff.
yeah.
Well, thank you all again. Don't forget to become a member if you like to support, the efforts of all Civil War history, but support the podcast as well. Consider becoming a member while you're already becoming a member of the Blue and Gray Education Society. Become a member of the Battlefields Foundation. Just get it all down at once, and we'll love you even more. So thank you all for listening. Don't forget to give it 5 stars and share with your friends, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.